So guys, welcome to the third episode of our Movember specials. I hope you've been enjoying them this far. Today's topic is a slightly heavy one, but it's essential, especially in line with what Movember's all about. And so the topic today me and Oscar will be tackling is mental health as a whole, and more specifically suicide. Before we dive into the topic, I want us to make a distinction between mental health and mental illness. Because when somebody says physical health, you think of it as a positive. You think gym or not gym. You think eating good or eating bad. And it's the same thing with mental. With mental, it's health, as in holistic. You know, it's not mental illness. So when we're using that word, we're not saying mental illness. We're talking about mental health as a whole. So I want us to firstly talk about our own sort of journeys in terms of our strengths in our mental health, how we've tried to develop that as individuals, and then I want to talk about a slight study we discussed earlier and a few of the issues within Kenya in general when it comes to men's mental health. One stat I think we'll kick off with is the fact that suicide is like the second leading cause of death around the world, which is absolutely nuts in our demographic of 18 to 35. So it's an issue. Like it's a serious issue. That's more dangerous than drugs. It's more dangerous than alcohol. So, you know, if you're putting effort into telling people to not do drugs, let's talk about enhancing your mental health as well, you know? So yeah, let's explore that topic. So Oscar, yourself.
Oh my God. You know, when you're talking about mental health, you always have to go to that place. Even if it's on camera, even if it's live, like, because it's real between you and me, like, it's something that both of us have had to face at some point or the other. Like, you have to go to that place where you're like, what does mental health actually mean to me? And what does it mean to our audience and to everyone? And for me, I think it all boils down to why we started Man Talk and why we decided that, you know, let's try and be the change that our society needs, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not talking from an entitled point of view, it's talking more from a point of view of men need to be heard, young men specifically in the past 10 to 15 to 20 years. There's been a lot of rapid change that's been unprecedented in human history. We don't even have the wiring for it. With how the value of social capital has increased with the advent of social media, with how the job market, the economy, we've been hit by 2 financial crises. Not one,
within
2.
Our average lifetime.
Within our average lifetimes. So like there's a lot of pressure on men to still deliver and provide and go out into markets and make families. And of course that comes with a lot of pressure. And if we undermine, and the more we undermine men, yes, we do understand that women throughout history have been undermined, but the empowerment of men and women should be as universal as possible. And like Man Talk is just trying to get men to understand that you're not alone. That we can work together throughout each problem that you have, and together we can build a community of professionals, of youth, and of strong, able men who are able to take Africa and Kenya to the next level. I think that's why I think we.
And I think the first point to achieve that is through conversations. And I think one thing we said when we had a seminar with Many Active, who were lucky enough to have us, is that through Man Talk, with us showing vulnerability and us being honest and open and being a reference point for guys to be like, these guys talked about this topic, we can too. You know, they're like, I watched this, and another conversation happens. It ties with your point of Man Talk being actually about conversation, because I think it's a healing process for most men. I think, like you've mentioned, with this like the pressures that have come with this new generation that we're in, I think one thing that in the world that I'm in terms of social media, that's one thing that I've seen play a massive role, and that's with. Globalization is an amazing thing. It's a fantastic thing, but when you're exposed to so many other things, that can sometimes come with pressures. When you're exposed to everybody in the world through your smartphone, that comes with now a mirror effect of like, I don't like my environment, I don't like where I am, I don't like what my life looks like in comparison to somebody else. Whereas before it might have been I compare myself to my immediate circle or slightly expanded circle. But now when it's on a global scale, there's a lot of pressure. And one thing I've seen from that is, we're talking just off camera about the situation in Kenya as a whole. So one example we were discussing is, we're both from Meru. From Meru. So our reference point was looking at Meru and a study that was done there. And this is a reflection of the pressures we're talking about. So I think they studied just over 500 guys with just a general conversation around suicide. Because now, as you mentioned, the statistic is very high. So within these 500 men, what they found is that they were asking them, have they ever contemplated it? Have they ever gone to that place where, you know, so many events have led to you thinking the only way out right now is suicide, which is a very grave thing to talk about. But they found that when you know somebody within your circle that has attempted or committed suicide, now the percentage of you contemplating it goes up. For instance, I think the stats were, if you have one person in, like, just socially or in family that's committed suicide, your rate of contemplating it goes up by 5%. And when you know 2 people, it goes up to 17%.
Jesus.
When you know 3 people or more, it's 32%.
Oh my God.
So the thing that I think I took away from that is, sometimes we look at suicide as the individual that got to that place, but we don't look at those impacted immediately from that person.
Yeah.
You know, that healing process is sometimes neglected because they focus completely on the person that's committed. But if we're looking at these stats, it's showing that if you know somebody that knows somebody that's committed suicide or attempted, chances are their contemplation rate is higher. So it's having that conversation. If you know somebody that has talked about their friend, be like, okay, that's very sad, but how are you, like, from that situation? How are you coping? Has that impacted your own mental health?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that sometimes when we're talking about the subject, we neglect. That's tough.
a very daunting statistic.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, because that means that if you've heard about someone committing suicide, then it means that there's a higher probability that you will contemplate it.
Yeah.
Contemplate it.
Yeah.
Which might be almost everyone who's watching this right now.
Yeah.
Meaning that you're in the red. You know. Yeah. So I think we should really let's really be careful around the topic of mental health. And one of the problems that I think I've seen now that we've done a little bit of work on suicide and mental health awareness is there's a lot of stigmatization of people who've actually attempted suicide, or who have mental health issues. And this stigmatization might even be embedded in our laws, which is quite insane, because I found that in Kenya, what is the legal status of suicide? This was one of the questions I had to ask myself, because, you know, if a society doesn't understand something, it tends to criminalize it. You get what I mean? So when I looked at the penal code, I actually was shocked. It's there in black and white. Section 226 of the penal code says that anyone who attempts suicide is guilty of a misdemeanor. Now, in terms of legal terminology, a misdemeanor is not necessarily an offense. It's not necessarily a felon. It is an offense, but it is not necessarily a felony. So felonies are what, you know, we talk theft, robbery with violence. That often leads to imprisonment of 3 years or higher, or imprisonment of 3 years or higher, or a jail term. So a felony is kind of the higher version of the misdemeanor. It's very hard for me to break it all down here, but a misdemeanor is still a reprimand by the state. Basically, the government of Kenya can sanction a punishment for you. So imagine you're punishing someone who's already suffering from mental health issues.
The worst part of that as well is, naturally, if something's criminalized, you've now got an extra stigma on somebody that was already battling societal pressures.
Exactly.
So you're not dealing with the issue, you're making the issue
criminal.
times 2.
Yeah, you're making exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm starting to ask myself, what resources has government allocated for people who suffer from mental health problems? Because if you criminalize something, have you then focused on rehabilitation?
Exactly.
Have you focused on rehabilitation? If, let's say, you make it a misdemeanor as a mechanism to hold someone accountable towards a program, then maybe it can be rationalized, if at all. But for someone to have a criminal record for attempting suicide, which means they're handling their own personal stresses, I think that's something that's just...
No, it's outrageous. It's outrageous.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we can look at, like we always say on Man Talk, we can look at exterior and be like, that's sad. Like, that's a situation in government that's very dire.
Yeah.
But the only thing we can do, because, you know, there's the quote we always say on our live videos is, it's not your fault about the situation, but it's your fault how you respond to the situation. Even though we're in Kenya and maybe that's the case, I think the only thing we can do is independently try to destigmatize. Because if they've now got the criminalization, maybe we can't change that law. We can appeal and stuff, but we can't change that law. What we can do is take away the stigma now on a societal level, so that even if you hear somebody's done it, it doesn't come into doesn't turn into the conversation of, oh, like, that guy's a bit unstable, that guy. It turns into an empathetic situation where you're like, okay, let's find out why. Let's not address the situation in a negative light. Let's normalize the conversation, because then now when that person is being asked to express how they got to that place, they're in a more comfortable position.
Yeah.
Rather than it being now a topic of, you know, maybe elders or somebody else in your immediate circle is now looking down on you because they look at it as a mental weakness.
Yeah.
As a mental weakness.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of the issues
I understand
lie.
that completely.
Yeah.
I think how I'd also like to put it is the social value of any law is in the behavior it creates.
Yes.
If you've created a law that creates stigma, that the government is willing to say we will reprimand you for something like this instead of we will support you or we will try our best to rehabilitate you. I think that's a bad indicator of where Kenya's priorities are when it comes to mental health. And globally, if it was analyzed, I think it might cost us a lot in terms of our political standing, our geopolitical standing. As individuals, I strongly believe that how you can rectify that is by being proactive in making sure that people who have attempted suicide should try to be made to be understood. Like, we understand the impulse that you're going through, and we understand the fact that it might not even be voluntary, you know, so you might need counseling, and like as friends or as people within that social circle, you're also at risk. But if you ignore it, just like you're ignoring the other person's needs, you too can be harmed.
100%.
So it's like, whoa, like that's a mind-blowing, like those two things, stigma and that statistic that you just told me about that 2%. Wow, I mean, that's insane, man.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, a lot of this does come from our environment, because when I was reading, there's two factors to it. There's one where it says that a lot of these stats in terms of the contemplation rates being higher was regardless of socio-economical status.
Really?
So no matter how rich you are, that effect you felt from somebody committing suicide still has the same effect as if it was somebody in a poorer economical state. You're still going to have that same effect. So regardless of your resource, that's a battle you need to fight, and you need help to fight it. And you need to be acknowledged that it's a battle you're fighting, because if you're going through that, you're one of the 32% contemplating, and it's never addressed, it carries on, you become that statistic, and it's a ripple effect. Then somebody else becomes the 32%. Do you see what I mean? Another situation that they were saying in terms of the people taking their lives is that it was down to sometimes extreme poverty. That was down to that. So I feel like there's two ways to sort of look at it. You know, regardless of how you get there, you're going to affect those people, but there's effects that your environment does dictate, you know, in terms of your mental health. So I feel like I think it sounds really fairy tale, but I think a lot of it does come down to like human kindness. Do you know what I mean? Like human kindness. Because if you've got somebody that's already struggling, like they're on extreme poverty, and it comes down to day-to-day things. Extreme poverty, imagine now you're on the streets doing something, right? And then every day, the people you're interacting with are looking at you, or they're like treating you badly. You know, you're a beggar and you're being treated badly. That now leads to them being like, this is my situation, and also society is making me feel even worse. That leads to a stat.
What can we do about that?
That's what I'm saying. I think it's just kindness. When you see somebody like down on their luck, a simple act of kindness, I really feel can make a difference. It's not on a macro level, but on a micro level as an individual, just a simple act of kindness. I genuinely believe that can make a difference, if not a dent.
I don't know. Like, you know, Mantalk, we're trying to build a community, and we've been doing so, you know, through our live episodes during COVID. Do you think that we should try and leverage that to try and like lift people from poverty? Do you think like we should try in terms of like building networks, whether it's charity donations or something? I don't know. We need to come up with a strategy. And we need everyone's help in this. We need to come up with a strategy on how to take away that need to take away your own life simply because of extreme poverty. And just try and contribute in whatever small way we can, because we're not like super wealthy guys. Like just to help a few people, you know, like be a platform that's for good. You know, I feel like
we need to have that conversation. And guys, if you have any ideas or like people that are doing this work already that we can plug into, we would love that. I want us to, like I mentioned at the beginning, I feel like vulnerability is strength. And I'll share mine. If you want to share yours, it's up to you. We've talked about societal pressures, and we talked about like stigmatization of men and the strength you're supposed to have, the so-called strength you're supposed to have as a man, meaning that weakness is normally a no-go. So I want to talk about my weakness and my experience that I've had, so that maybe, because what I do online, I put myself out there quite a bit, like in terms of fashion, lifestyle, and sometimes that might paint the picture of Eli's always okay, Eli's always rosy, Eli doesn't go through these dark situations. So I want to just tell people like what I've been through. When I came to Kenya, obviously moving, so in my studies in university, one of the massive life stresses is moving house. On top of that, as number one, death is third. Moving environment is first in terms of a life stress.
Jeez.
Yeah. So when I moved to Kenya, I didn't take that into account. I've had a great time. But the importance of real relationships is something we take for granted. So in my line of work, everything I was doing, it was very, very fickle relationships. It was superficial, and it's a lot of like, even in business, it was you need something, I need something. There's no real connection here. Whereas I've come from somewhere where I have a really strong network of friends, and that's something that took a toll on me, and I didn't realize until I want to say beginning of 2019.
Really?
Everything was going well. I think I was making money. If you saw my Instagram story, I was going to events all the time. I was with the finest chicks all the time,
all
right?
the time, yeah.
And on paper, it looked fantastic. It looked amazing. And that's why I want to say this, because if someone looked at my story then, they'll be like, I wish I was doing what Eli's doing. And I get those messages. But there was one 4-day stretch. I think that week I'd done like interview TV, been to like a gig in 1 week, and endorphin levels, enjoyment levels were high. But then I got to a Thursday, I think it was a Thursday of the next week, and I was just like, I'm not enjoying myself.
Yeah.
On paper, I've been enjoying myself. I'm not enjoying myself. And I think that's the first time, as an individual in a room alone, I cried as a fully grown man.
For real?
For real. I cried and I was like, what? I don't understand
yeah.
Because everything here, there's money in my wallet, there's people I'm with all the time, but I still feel like I'm like alone. I'm with my brother, but I still feel I'm in my room alone. And that's when I spoke to my dad actually and said, you know what the reason is that you're going through this? He says, all of your relationships right now.
So you talked to whom?
My dad. I called my dad. And actually, before I talk about that, the difficulty it took for me to pick up my phone, it was I looked at my phone for a good half an hour. Yeah. I texted my brother, he was out, didn't reply to my text. I was like, firstly, come on, I've just texted you. I just said, dude, I'm not feeling too good. Can you call me, right? But that was like I think he thought I'm not feeling well, I'm ill, right? He didn't realize it was like I'm feeling down. Then I called my dad, I was like, Dad, I don't know what's going on. Like, have you ever been through this? Because he's done a lot of stuff and he's achieved a lot. So it feels like you're achieving, but at the same time, it feels like you're on an island on your own. And he said, honestly, how many people are you with at the moment? This went at the beginning of our friendship. So we weren't as close as we are now in terms of the guys at Man Talk. Yeah. So it's like, how many people do you have real conversations with? How many people do you feel like you can call if you need help that are in Kenya that are less than an hour away? I said one, my brother. And he was like, that's the problem. When you're back home, you can go to your friend's house, you can go have real conversations. And I was like, I'd been on this roller coaster of, doing good things, meeting new people, and when it came to that dark moment, I was like, yeah, this means nothing. And that's when I understood, when you hear somebody's taken their own life, somebody really rich has done something, some celebrity's done this. That's now them experienced that on a higher level. I experienced that on a really small level. And I was like, if I didn't deal with that dark moment and have a conversation, and I internalized and carried on doing it, carrying on doing it. If you remember our conversations, I said to you, as a joke, I've retired.
Yeah.
That's why.
Oh,
and I've never told you. I said, I don't care about going out.
Yeah.
That was why. I had the 4-day stretch.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I've never said
this is why I always tell you, bruh.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah, and
you're like, I'm retired.
No, I'm retired. I don't care about those kind of relationships anymore.
Oh my God.
For me to go to an event, there needs to be money involved or something involved. But for me to go and just have interviews, I don't do interviews. I told you the other day, I was asked to do an interview. I don't do it because I don't want to have all of this high energy, but for no real reason. So that's just been I thought I'd share that because I think it's important.
That's a powerful story.
Exactly, yeah. So when somebody's even watching me online, it's never all rosy. I've cried for 3 days straight as a fully grown man, 27-year-old man.
Wild.
So that's just me showing my vulnerability. I don't know if you've got anything you want to share. If not,
I think I did.
Yeah.
I think I did on a live.
Yeah.
I did share. Yeah, I did share.
Guys, honestly, I don't know which one it was.
It was.
But Oscar shared a really deep story.
Yeah. On my live, I shared like the whole how I had to transform myself from who I was to who I am now, and it was tough also. Yeah. But guys, I'm going to get him back out of retirement. Don't worry.
Yeah. As a retire.
It's my project. It's my personal project.
Yeah.
Every time I used to holler at you, I didn't even know I didn't even know that's what you're going through, man. And you've come out stronger for it. I feel.
Yeah, for sure. There's more clarity. Yeah. So I think the takeaway for anyone watching or listening to that story is that take real relationships seriously. It's not. It's life can look like you're meeting all these new people, you're doing all this stuff, if you don't have real relationships, you can find yourself on an island.
Trust me.
Because you're never always going to be with somebody.
Even for me, like, I think the whole, just to tie into the whole relationships thing, like with Man Talk and kind of with joining social media and putting myself more out there, I've also like developed fresh relationships. But one of the things that I'm really grateful for is that Eli and Martin and the homies have been there like to kind of give me wisdom. And I've not lost touch with my childhood friends. I love South Sea homies till I die. Like till I die. So like I haven't lost touch with those people, and those are the people that know me, that's grown up with me. Team Ustad, the Man Talk crew now. I have Eli and my boys. So like I've not lost touch of that. And even when people come into my life now, I still measure them from that lens of you know, because I've like you've seen the fallouts that I've had to have with some people who just seem to be extremely superficial and have not a drop of concern for whatever it is they do and the consequences of the actions. And you know how that really irritates me. And the world of social media can be very superficial. People there might be hanging out, doing drinks, chilling, but there's no real vibe, there's no real connection. And like don't buy into it, guys. Your life is beautiful. Trust me when I tell you.
J. Cole says it best. No such thing as a life that's better than
no
yours,
such
man.
thing. Nothing.
So
I think
have real relationships and have somebody. My reference point was my dad. We've never had that kind of conversation. But it just being like, just go, just say it. Say it to somebody, you'll be surprised at their reaction. Because I was even hesitant to give all the information when I was talking to him. But you'll be surprised. So, talk to your parents. They'll surprise you. They'll surprise you.
And your homies have a proper support system. And if your homies can't be a support system, then they're not your homies.
They're not your homies.
Clear, cut and dry. All right, man. I think
guys, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've taken something from that. There's one more episode. I hope you enjoy watching that next week on mantalk.ke.
K-E.
Out. Cheers, guys.